so much, everyone, for joining us this evening for a discussion that I'm sure is bound to be an illuminating one. We ask that all of our participants just keep their microphones muted. You can keep your cameras on, and you'll have a chance towards the end of our panel to include some questions that will be answered into the chat function. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Neftali Danier.
Good evening, everyone. As my colleague Alexandra said, my name is Neftali Danier. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations. We welcome you on behalf of the Alumni Relations, on behalf of Robert C. Weaver Society, the Black Male Initiative of Baruch College, and the Counseling Center of Baruch College. We welcome you this evening to part 2 of Walking in My Shoes, a conversation with Black sons and fathers. And right now we will take a moment to hear the Black National Anthem.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat has not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far along the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in your path, we pray. lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God and true to our native land.
Thank you, Professor Hudson. What a way to begin our program. And it was truly wonderful. To begin our program this evening, I'd like the opportunity to introduce to everyone our panelists and our moderator for this evening. Our first panelist is Professor Jamel Coy Hudson. Professor Hudson is a lecturer of rhetoric and public advocacy in the Department of Communication Studies at Baruch College. He earned an education specialist degree in educational leadership from Regent University and his BA and MA with distinction in rhetorical studies from Hofstra University. Professor Hudson joined Baruch College after beginning his teaching career at Hofstra University, where he was an adjunct assistant professor in the Writing Studies and Rhetoric Department and faculty tutor in the Hofstra Writing Center. At Baruch College, Professor Hudson teaches courses in speech communication, classic rhetoric, and persuasion. Welcome, Professor Jamel Coy Hudson.
Thank you, Nefti. Thank you all for being in attendance. I'd like to now introduce a gentleman that means a lot to me. I'm thankful he's in this space with us today. I'd like to introduce my father, Mr. Ronald Hudson. Father, are you there?
Yes, hello. Greetings, everyone.
Good to see you, sir. I'm looking forward to the conversation with you. For all of you who, don't know, that's my father, and my father is an educator. He's been teaching for over 20 years, and I look forward to hearing the insight he'll share with us, as well as the other fathers and members of the community who are here today. So round of applause for the dad. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Nefti. You're muted, my friend.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Hudson. Our next panelist is Andrew Lawton. Andrew is a Percy E. Sutton Sikh counselor, providing academic, personal, and professional counseling for Baruch students. Additionally, he serves as the program director for the Percy E. Sutton Sikh's Urban Male Leadership Academy Scholars Program, which serves to develop and promote academic excellence, social consciousness, and leadership skills of Black and Latino male college Sikh students. Andrew has worked in education and social services for over 15 years, encompassing youth development, child welfare, outpatient mental health, anti-racism, community service, advocacy, and leadership development. Andrew is a graduate of Syracuse University with a BS in television, radio, and film production. He also earned a master's in social work from Hunter College School of Social Work in New York City. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Nefti. And like Jamel, I am so happy to introduce my father, Mr. Vidal Lawton Jr. What's up, Pops?
How you doing?
All right. Yes. And I was gonna save this till the end, but I'll say it now. My pops, Mr. Lawton, is a Baruch graduate. So there we go. All right. So let's go. And Mr. Hudson, is so great to meet you after spending time with your son. So I'm really excited for this conversation.
Welcome, Mr. Lawton,
Thank you.
alum of Baruch College. Our moderator for this evening is the Dr. Gary Dillon. Dr. Gary Dillon is a New York State licensed psychologist who earned his MA in counseling for mental health and wellness from New York University and his PhD in counseling psychology from Fordham University. Over the past decade, he has worked in numerous hospitals and college counseling centers throughout New York City. Dr. Dillon takes an integrative approach to therapy, often working relationally from a feminist and multicultural informed lens with clients while incorporating dynamic interventions and evidence-based treatments. Dr. Dillon's areas of expertise involve social justice, microaggression, diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of which inform his sensitive, curious, collaborative, and conscientious approach to therapy. He has published and presented his research focusing on understanding the unique lived experiences of marginalized populations, such as those who are of color, undocumented, or self-identify as members of the LGBTQIA+ community. Dr. Dillon is currently working at Baruch College as a supervising psychologist, student psychological counselor, providing individual and group psychotherapy, crisis intervention, supervision, psychoeducational workshops, and outreach service. We welcome you this evening, Dr. Dillon, and now I turn the program over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nefti, and welcome everyone, and happy Black History Month. We are glad to have you all here for this event. As we continue to celebrate Black History Month and pay homage to our ancestors, our community, and our lived experience, we thought it'd be really enriching and healing to have the spotlight shown on our Black men, the fathers and sons of the panel. We'll first start off with some structured questions for our panelists, then moving towards questions that they have for each other, and lastly, we'll shift into a Q&A to allow all of you to participate and engage with all of us. We just ask that you keep your mics muted and use the chat feature to share any reactions, thoughts, and questions, and we will definitely do our best during that segment to get to those. And I guess we'll just start. And my first question goes out to the fathers who've joined us, Mr. Hudson and Mr. Lawton. While I can imagine how proud you must be of your sons who are really successful and are the definition of Black excellence, I wonder if we can go back just a little bit. I wonder if you can describe for me the feelings and the thoughts you had when you first realized that you were bringing a Black son into the world. Mr. Hudson, I wonder if we can start with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. When I think of that question, the first thing that comes to mind is scared. Scared that as a father, I may not be able to live long enough to see my son grow to become a young, productive man of society. I worry that when my son was born, that I might not be able to see him through this journey we call life. And that's something that concerned me, and still to this day for many, because as we know, things are unpredictable and things can be very challenging. So that's kind of what I feel about that statement or question you asked.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hudson. I think that fear that we have for our Black men and for those of us who inhabit these bodies is really real and palpable. Mr. Lawton, tell us from your perspective, what were some of the things that you were feeling and thinking about once you found out that young Andrew was coming into this world? Just unmute. Oh,
excitement. I was really thrilled because it had been a number of years before we had any children at all. So when Andrew was coming along, there was this great anticipation in my mind. And so much so that the day that he was born, I didn't leave the hospital until after dark. And I can barely remember the trip back home. It's sort of like I was in another world, just floating, getting home. I hadn't really thought very much about race right then at his birth. That came along a little bit later. The major thing that I guess was going through my mind right then was, will I be up to the challenge? Will I be able to to teach him the things that he needs to be taught in his life. And as it turned out, that it seems that he remembered some of the things I taught him, not all of them, but some of them, enough of them to get him where he is now. Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Lawton. I imagine that, we are often hit with multiple feelings and thoughts simultaneously, and at times can be really overwhelmed, right? And so Mr. Lawton and Mr. Hudson have really talked about some of the dual thoughts and feelings that they've had. But I think our community in particular is one that has always been, or maybe perhaps had to be, resilient. So I imagine that after sitting with and honoring all of those feelings and thoughts, that there needed to be some planning that ensued. So I'm curious, what were the most critical lessons that you felt that your sons needed to learn or understand as a Black boy growing up in the US? Mr. Lawton, we'll start with you for this one.
Well, one of the first things that really concerned me was being out in the street. And I could remember how to present, as we call it, the talk, well, about going out and being confronted by a blue uniform and telling him that, warning him about making sudden moves and running off at the mouth, because I had heard or knew of too many stories of people who tried to act smart and ended up in more trouble than they bargained for. So that was one of the major issues that I had on my mind. And the second one was going to school. Was the kind of thing where Andrew's mother and I both went to school, and it was something that was looked upon by members of my family very highly, because my own father only made it to the sixth grade while he was in South Carolina. And it wasn't until he was in New York for a while that he decided to go back and get a GED, which I thought was really fantastic for somebody in the late 1940s, early 1950s, to do something like that. There's nobody else in my family who was up until that time who had gone further in school. So it was a kind of thing where everybody was looking forward to, first they looked forward for me to go to school, and then naturally they turned the spotlight on Andrew, because they figured if I went to school, Andrew's got to go to school, and he's got to do at least as much as I did. So we concentrated on that to make sure that he did, and he came through for us.
It sounds like he followed your footsteps with regards to education, and eventually came and landed here at Baruch, which is a beautiful thing for your two generations. Mr. Hudson, I wonder for you, what were some of the life lessons that you wanted to impart on Jamal as he sort of entered into the world?
When I listened to Mr. Lawton, when he mentioned how his son would go out into the world and how he would have to encounter police officers, which is something I have had to have done many times. And I thought of my son, and I said to him many times that be aware that there's a double standard for you and for others. You may, as a young child, you may commit an act, you may be mischievous, and it could be something that's really not serious, but they may penalize you more harshly than potentially others that may not be of color. That's something I had to struggle with. As you guys see today, the young man, Jamal, he's polished now. He was a very boisterous individual who had to sort of corral and monitor and move him in a way which he was a child. But our Black children are perceived in a way that can be aggressive or disobedient and not cooperative. And they're labeled. But we take another child, they'll be more lenient and, oh, that's just a child being a child. So that was something I had to really instill and work on, because there is a double standard. And this is what I've seen as an educator in school, the double standard that applies to different people. Thank you.
Thank you. I could hear in your heavy breath how much pride and care and concern there is for your son. I hear that from both of you. And I'm thinking about the role of a parent, right? Is one such that the relationship to their child requires love and support, mentorship and guidance, but I think most of all, connection and trust. And regarding the latter, I wonder how you both have established a relationship built on trust with your sons, and how you currently work to maintain that level of trust. Mr. Hudson, we'll start with you.
Who was that you asked for? I can't hear you.
My apologies. About the level of trust, how do we begin to create and maintain that level of trust with our sons, such that they're invested? Please.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting question. This takes me back many years. A question I'm excited about answering, because there was a gentleman, a Mr. Watkins, a biology teacher of mine when I went to high school. He happened to be pretty much one of the only Black teachers in my building. He was a science teacher, and what I would do is I would sneak into his classroom. I would leave my cafeteria, and I'd want to go hear what he had to say, the connection that he had for me. Later in life, I met up with him later on when I was cutting hair, and I would go to his family's house, and I would cut their hair, and there in their home, they were able to impart on me how and what it took to raise a child, being that I didn't come from a structured home. There were things I really didn't know. And I remember speaking to Mr. Watkins one day in his house with his wife and his children. And I remember speaking about telling your child the truth. And I said, you know what? If I don't know something, I'm not going to tell my son I don't know. I'm going to just make something up, because I don't want him to know that I don't know. Because when I grew up, all my adults and parents and uncles, they all knew everything. They never wanted to show that they didn't know. So I thought that was what I should do. And he said to me, Ron, no, don't lie to your son. Don't misguide him. Let him know that if you don't know something, let him know that you don't know, and say, son, let's take the time together to find the answer together. And that's a premise I've worked on with my son all my life, because when something would come up, I would not tell him something I didn't know. I would tell him and be honest, son, I don't know. But let's take the time to find the answer together. And that, what Mr. Watkins imparted on me, was huge. It was a burden that was lifted, because it's okay not to know, because you can't know. And if there's one thing you want your child to be able to say, if my dad says it, he means it, that's his word, and I'm gonna live by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. I think that that level of vulnerability is so important. And also for many folks in America, is not expected of Black men to be that vulnerable, to be that open emotionally, and to have that level of communication and care with regards to our children. So I appreciate you displaying that and talking a little bit about that. Mr. Lawton, I wonder for you, how you see your level of trust with Andrew and how you've maintained that over the years.
Mr. Hudson just led me down a path, train of thought that Andrew and I talk about from time to time, but I don't think about it maybe as much as I should. And that was that weight of knowing all the answers. And I used to think also, like Mr. Hudson, that I had to have the right answer for everything. And it got to a point one time when he asked me something, I don't know. And what I said was, let's go to the library and look it up and find out. So we used to go to the library together. One day we walk into the library. The New York City Library had gone on strike. And we live right at the border between Queens and Nassau. So I purchased a membership in the Nassau Library so that we could use that library while the Queens Library was closed. So we walk into the library, and this woman is sitting behind the desk. We walk up to the desk to ask for direction to find the information that we were looking for. And she goes with this, I'll be with you boys in a minute. I said, I'm his father. And then she looks up at us and recognizes that we're not the same age. I don't recall her apologizing or anything like that, but she did lead us to the information that we needed. But all that is to say that that was one of the things that Andrew helped me remember as a way of my showing him how to conduct himself in the world. You know, I guess I could have gone wild and jumped up on the desk and started yelling and screaming and carrying on, but I didn't think that was not necessary. What was necessary right then was to get him the information he needed for this assignment he had to do in school. So we had to focus on that first. There was an incident before that where this business of trust comes to mind. Was that I used to take Andrew and his sister to the supermarket with me. And one day we walk into the supermarket and we go down one aisle, and there was something that we needed that was in that aisle, and he knew what it was. He knew the product that we normally use. So I left him to get it. I walked to the end of the aisle and turned the corner and went an aisle or two over. About 30 seconds later, he comes around the corner running towards me and says, some man told him to put the item down, that he couldn't have that. So I stopped what I was doing and ran down the aisle and turned the corner. Just then the manager was coming towards us. I went up to him and I said, look, you tell the store detective that if my son is doing something he shouldn't be doing, you tell me. I said, he reports to me, I'll take care of it. You know, leave him alone. And he said, it wasn't the store manager, it was somebody else. As it turned out, it was some of the guys who stocked the shelves, and they were mouthing off at Andrew, who was 7 or 8 years old, something like that at the time. But to me, in my mind, it was the kind of thing where if he does something, tell me. Don't be acting like you're supposed to take care of it. No, that's my job. Let me know. Hopefully that was something that helped him know that I was in his corner, not their corner. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It sounds like a part of trust requires honesty. It requires that people feel protected and feel safe. And I really appreciate that. I think, you know, you guys are definitely warming my heart tonight. I know we often see images and hear messages that depict our communities as fatherless, you know, the stereotype of the deadbeat or the criminal dad or fatherless sons. But I think what we're seeing and hearing today is that that is not our only narrative when it comes to fathers and sons in the Black community. And I think for Jamel and Andrew, it sounds like their relationship in particular really defies those stereotypes in many ways. And so my next question is for Jamel and Andrew, actually. And I want you to share with everyone the moment when you realized that the lessons that you were learning from your fathers were actually teaching you and preparing you to navigate white America as a Black man. Jamel, I wonder if you can start with that. It's kind of big. Take your time, brother. Digest it.
Yeah, Brother Gary, that's a heavy question. And
It
I'll
is.
take my time and do my
Please
best to
do.
respond with candor. When I realized he was right, And I was a young Black boy playing with toys, and I realized that I was young, and I said, he's on to something. The old saying, you can lead a mule to water, can't make him drink. It takes a lot of variations, but my father, I'm happy he's in this room today. This is really a great experience. From my earliest memories have had him in my life as a helper, as an example, as a role model, and someone that I could ask for if I needed assistance. And when the advice he gave worked, and I said, wow, this man is wise. There's a wise nugget, wisdom. And early on, I saw that my father had shown me things and had prepared me to learn how to navigate. And the question was white America, which for me is huge because I'm a young Black man doing the best I can. And my father had to prepare me to be a young Black man. I think, thank you, Father. I think you did the best you could. And I'm thankful for how you raised me and how you did many things, sacrificed and worked and provided so that I could be a professor, a teacher, aspired to be whatever I wanted to be. And you let me keep my young Black boy joy and allow me to move forward and try to be a productive young Black man. So that's my answer, sir. Brother Andrew, what do you think?
Thank you. I feel similarly around appreciating the conversation. What I will say is that what I appreciate, the way I think of it is that my parents, you, Daddy, I felt like, in Karate Kid, I was Daniel's son and you were Mr. Miyagi. And there were things you teach me, so I'd have to wax on, wax off, and paint the fence. And I was just like, how is this going to help me, in the world? And then having experiences where I realized, like, oh, that's what that was about in the training. So you told the story that I was going to tell about the library, but it was in that moment when everything clicked, because at that point I was in high school, and it was, needing to get, as you said, get the job done. And in the education and the learning was important. And for me, what that taught me from seeing how you reacted about how do you react with dignity and stay alive and not end up in handcuffs. So it was so you were very clear with her. We got what we needed and we got out of there intact. And that was something that was something that it was just like, oh, similarly to Mr. Hudson, you talked about Jamel, I don't know if I was quite as exuberant as Jamel, However, you're in the world. So so that is how to be visible to be visible in situations where people might want you to be invisible, and to be able to speak your piece in a way and be heard so you can go home and to be able to look at your child. And so I was like, I very much, so going back to the trust and also understanding how to negotiate white America was just like, well, this is how we need to negotiate, so and get what we need. So thank you.
Thank you both. The thought of visibility is sort of sitting with me, right? Because sometimes that's not feasible, sometimes that's not possible, and sometimes that just isn't safe because of the bodies that we inhabit, right? And so I'm often thinking about how I enter spaces and I sort of put on my hero's mask, whether it be my code switching or whether it be shrinking who I am to make other people feel safe. And so I really appreciate that you all are sort of sharing that. And I imagine for the fathers, although they're saying they were sort of winging it, I think there was a method to the madness, because I think what they've done here is passed on their intergenerational knowledge of how to survive as people who inhabit these bodies, right? And so I want to go back to the fathers and really ask about what motivated those teachings? What, I know Papa Lawton talked a little bit about that library situation, but I want to know about other situations, experiences, negative, direct or indirect messages that you've received as a Black man, and how it has impacted your role as a father, or the messages that you've sort of sent to your children. And we can start off with Mr. Lawton with this one.
What this exercise is pointing out to me is that there are a lot of things that I never really thought about before. Where did I get that information from? And I can say it came from two people, my father and my uncle. My father and my uncle ran a mom and pop grocery store in the Morrisania section of the Bronx in the 1950s. And I used to be around them because I was the oldest of 6 children. 4 in my family, and that my first cousins lived right across the street from us. So since I was the oldest one, I spent the most time in the store with either my father or my uncle, because they rotated keeping the store open on Sunday. So rather than let them be by themselves, my mother dispatched me to go to the store. The others didn't go, I went. But when we were busy, and when we were just busy, but other times when we weren't busy, we'd be talking about one thing or another. And I assume now, looking back on it, that a lot of the things that I learned, I absorbed from those discussions with them. They weren't actually lecturing me as much as telling me stories. And those stories gave me the kind of understanding of how things work in this world and what you have to do. And I guess what I did without fully realizing it was pass it on to Andrew and his sister. Because it, as I said, it wasn't the kind of thing that I really intellectually understood right in the front of my head what it was I had learned and how to go about passing it on. It was just there. So I'm glad I'm here tonight. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Mr. Hudson, what about you?
Yes. I'll start by saying a lot of what I had to really start to share with my son started to take place when I went into actual teaching. As I said, I started teaching about 20 years ago, and the story is a bit not troublesome, but I have to reenact or think about it. When I first went to the school district I work in is in Brentwood. On my first day there, I just met staff. I didn't know anyone there. And we went up to the library, and it was like about an hour meeting, and we met for a minute. Then I went down. I happened to be a physical education teacher, and I went into the gym, and there were 4 of us. There was a female and 2 other colleagues who happened to all be white. And one of the gentlemen asked the other male phys ed teacher what his father did for a living. And the gentleman responded and said his father did X, Y, Z. And then he proceeded to ask me, "Hey, Ron, what's your father do for a living?" And before I could respond, he says, "Oh, what was your father, an inmate?" So needless to say, I erupted with mighty roars. That was very, very, it was an attack. It was an attack on my manhood. It was an attack on my family, my culture. That was something I was embarked and just placed in this institution my first day there. I didn't even know this man an hour. As I stated, I thank God that I had the ability to control my physical being. And I did say a few things because I was a bit troubled. And I went and I shared with administration what had happened. And it was troubling. Like, what are you guys doing here? I came into this world or this institution for children to enlighten, and this is what I received. The year went on and I was in middle school. And instead of addressing him, the individual I'm talking about, what they did is after my first year, they took me from the middle school. And by the way, in all of Brentwood, out of roughly 60 phys ed teachers, health teachers, I was the only Black phys ed teacher in the entire district. And they took me and placed me in the kindergarten. That was a way of checking me, quieting me, shutting me up. And I sat there year after year, and I was being attacked. And this went on for roughly 10 years, and they would not let me out. I remember the principal asked me, Ron, why don't you just resign and go to another district? I said, no, I will not. This is my town, because I also live there. I said, these are my people, my family. I'm not going anywhere. I did not know how to fight at that time. Roughly 10 years later, I got involved in a school board election. And at that moment, when we started campaigning, we got control of the community. We had control of the school board. And when we got control, my people said, no, 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 no. We're taking Mr. Hudson out of here. And now we're going to put you back in the middle school. And there I began to continue to do what I need to do for our children. And I'm going to speed up just a little bit. And I would share with the district over and over again, when I saw injustice committed against our children, I wasn't silent. And they knew I wasn't going to be silent, so they tried to silence me by keeping me down there. But now that I'm back and I continue to speak, and I'll say this, that same individual that I spoke about that asked me if my father was an inmate, they didn't check him. They allowed him to function in that capacity. And just about a year ago, that same individual that attacked me, attacked my father, he was arrested and found guilty and pled guilty to raping one of the students in our school. So what am I saying? It's, even though I went through what I went through, I will continue to fight. I will continue to speak. And the system, yes, the system, to me, the system failed the children, because if they had checked him early, maybe, just maybe, this could have been avoided. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Hudson. I think this is why we have events like this, because we know that we are fighting against the system, we are fighting against the government, and we are fighting against the people who often are fearful of us or attacking us. The Black psyche is one that is in danger and is an endangered species many of the times. We are enduring, surviving, deflecting, dodging racism, microaggressions, bias, stereotypes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's so important for us to turn in and to join together and have these moments where we can build each other up, you know? And as you're speaking, I'm hearing the trauma, and I'm vicariously being traumatized, to be really honest with you, because it is, while not my story, a reflection of my past as well, right? So to think about like how we are all connected. I do want to take a moment for us to just sort of pause and reflect a little bit about some of the things that we've been hearing and talking about, because I think we need to give it its own time and space to really honor it. You all have been giving a wealth of knowledge and information, and there's nothing like the storytelling style of Black man. You know, we tell a story, there are lessons embedded, and if you are not listening, you will miss them, right? So I want to take a moment right here because, you know, if we frame this in the context of power and privilege, with us not having either, you know, we're talking about the trauma that we endure day in and day out. We first are talking about the anticipation of trauma, right? So you guys are talking about being fearful, being worried, being concerned, both for the lives of your sons, but also for your own, and being able to be here with them through their journey. You're talking about the experience of trauma, right? The double standards, learning how to navigate street life. In the 90s, we had I won't say the 90s. Whole time we've been here, we had the blank while Black, driving while Black, walk while Black, drink while Black, being while Black, et cetera, right? And then we're talking about coping with and healing from the trauma, right? These are the talks, right? Like our talks look really different. When non-Black folks have talks, their talks about birds and bees. That must be so nice. Our talks about making it home safe, right? That is not a privilege that we have to avoid those talks. It's a requirement for the safety of our children. We're talking about the passing of the baton, right? Like, how do we get this generation to surpass the last? We're talking about how we leverage education, how that may be our way out and up in some respects, right? There's so much here, and I am loving all of it. And so, and I'm seeing some faces and reactions, and it sounds like people are really vibing with it as well. At this time, I did want to invite Brother Andrew and Jamel to check in with each other and ask any questions that they may have of one another. I'll let you two take the floor.
Brother Andrew, how you feeling?
Inspired.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Here I go. As you prepare to become a father, because everyone knows here, my friend Andrew and his lovely partner Kendra are expecting soon. He's getting ready to become a father. We can give that a round of applause. That's an amazing thing. If you prepared to become a father soon, what's one thing you've consciously done to prepare to bring that Black child into this world, sir?
Thank you for the question. It's a huge one, and I know we talked about it. And then when I saw about 2 hours ago when you changed it, and I finally saw the wording, I was shaking. And so I was trying to write something. So basically, but I knew it would all come out through this conversation. So, and I think it just resonates with what we've heard from both of our fathers. It's the love and understanding, being able to thinking about how I'm going to manage anxiety, stress, drawing on loved ones, being able to think about how I'm managing time to make time for what comes next, being able to say yes to certain things, saying no to certain things, even thinking about, our conversation on Friday, when we were in preparation, that was the day that I'm spending getting time ready here. And it was just like, well, it's important. And, so being able to just be clear about why I'm doing what I'm doing in order to welcome our child into this world, to just be able to articulate the lessons that I would like to in a very conscious way. So just preparing my spirit. What what I was writing at the end, I just said I could have just said one word or one phrase. Just check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like is what I is because that is what where I'm at with it, as in everything. And so to the question about how am I preparing, is like everything I'm going through a filter saying, is this helpful? Is this not helpful? How is this going to impact my family? And being very intentional. So thank you for the question.
And because of that preparation, sir, you and Sister Kendra are going to bring forth that young child, and it's going to be, it's beautiful. The way you've prepared and you're checking off those boxes, man. I'm really happy for you, as we all are. I think a lot of people are sending good love and support your way, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. And so now my question for you is, as I've gotten to know you, I'm inspired by your spiritual connections. And if you could elaborate how the Black church and the spiritual tradition your father hails from influences how you move today as a powerful Black man.
Bless you for that question, brother. I'm blessed. I want everybody on this call to know that Baruch is Hebrew for blessed. So if anybody asks you, you walk up to him and say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haodem asher kiddushanu ba mitzvah tov. Blessed God, you ruler of the universe. I'm blessed. I'm blessed, man. And my father is man, he's a great friend, a wise man. He's also a man, I believe, of God. He loves the Lord. He's shown me how to do the best I can to honor God, honor my parents. My days will be long, to keep my faith, to stand steadfast on the word and walk into these different spaces. We're in a Baruch space right now, Baruch College. And I can truly say it's been a blessing to work there and still know that I can be a young Black man who's grounded in his faith and meet people and look people in the eye and shake hands and operate in this world, because I know my roots, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for my ancestors and all those who got us here. That's what helps move me, man. That's it.
Thank you. That's what's up.
Oh,
so
yeah, we got one more. Yeah. You want to ask? You can
no,
ask.
you can. No, you can ask. You can
okay,
ask.
I'll ask. So, Mr. Lawton and Mr. Hudson, we have a question for you, sirs, gentlemen. Do you guys remember bringing your son to work day, bring your child to work day? Well, how was it coming to work with us today? Bring your father to work day. Question.
Yes, let us know.
Let us know. What was it like coming to work with us? Mr. Lawton, you can go first. Go ahead, sir.
It was a lot easier than going with him to fly. He invited me to go flying with him about 3 years ago. So we went out to Farmingdale and we got in this single engine plane and took off and flew down to Long Beach, all the way back up to the, what do you call it? Between Long Island and Connecticut, and then turned around and came back down and landed. So, and your buddy over there, Andrew, was at the wheel taking his first lesson. And I took my cameras along and did the best I could do to document it. But seriously, as far as going to work with him, he asked me to come here and visit the campus again. Hadn't been here in a while. And I said, sure, I'll do that. When he was younger, he and his sister used to go to work with me during the, they take your child to work day. So there's one time they go up there with me and I take Andrew down. The company I worked for at the time was in the General Motors building. We were on the 50th floor looking north. So I took him down the hall and introduced him to one of the graphic designers who had an office overlooking Central Park. And I left him there and I went on back down the hall to my area. And end of the day, we go home and he told me about his visit. The next morning I come in and I'm in my office and my friend Renzo comes by and he said, I had a great time yesterday. What do you mean? He said, your son, you brought him by to visit with me. And when he came by, I thought it was just going to be just another little kid come by and it's going to be about toys and this, that, and the other thing. He said, but it didn't turn out that way. He said, when you came by, when you left, we started talking about not only the view about Central Park, but the history of the park and all kinds of stuff about New York. And I said, really? I didn't know all of that. He didn't tell me he had all that conversation. So needless to say, I was very proud of that happening. So I figured I'd come today and see if I could return the favor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Hudson,
Mr. Hudson, what about you?
Mhm.
Very interesting. When Jamal asked me to participate, I immediately went into a state of panic. Oh Lord, because all these years, I'm the behind the stage person. I'm always pushing and promoting and developing, and I'm like, hold up, this is not what I do, son. This is what you do. I don't get out front and speak. And then he assured me I didn't have to do a dissertation, or I didn't have to stand up and really, but he assured me it's going to be okay. And it was an honor that my son thought that highly of me to present me to the world. I looked forward to it. Because this young man, like I said, for me, speaking, I speak in front of my students and things of that nature, but speaking is what he does, what he has done. And to ask me to come and to speak, knowing that I'm being compared to this young man, it's a lot. And then I had to realize it's not a comparison, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to stand in and to share what little I've known or what I've experienced through life with my son. And I want everybody to know that he does have a father, and that I've done all I could do to make him the best man he could be. Thank you.
That was really beautiful. I think that everyone's voice here on the panel tonight is very powerful, and I am appreciating each and every one of you. And I think it is a beautiful sentiment to have everything come full circle, and to have your child not only walk in your shoes, but bust them at the seam and surpass you and do greatness, because it is a testimony not only to who you are and how you raised them, but also a testimony to who they are in their own growth. I think you guys have pointed out so much of what we have to offer as individuals, as a community. You know, we are mathematicians, right? Like people don't know that. Black people are mathematicians. From the Egyptians to the Africans, we are mathematicians. Every day we encounter things, and in that moment we have to add our initial reaction. We have to take away our safety. We have to multiply our masculinity. We have to consider our spirituality. We have to divide the outcome. Like there's so much that goes into it. But we do that in a split second, and we handle how we handle, and we check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. And I appreciate you all. And I also appreciate our non-Black counterparts for showing up and showing out today, because I think like Black History Month is Black History and Them Month. It is all of our histories. We are all here together, so we should all be learning from one another about our individual and collective histories, so that way this can be more like a melting pot and less like the TV dinner that it usually is. Okay, and I'm gonna actually turn it over to our organizers for the Q&A.
Thank you again to our amazing panelists for joining us this evening, all of our fathers and sons that joined us. I think, it was just such an enriching discussion, and we're getting so many great positive comments in the chat. Just again, if you have any questions, you can put your question in the chat, but we have a few that we'd like to go through now. So for the sons on our panel, what is the greatest lesson that your father has ever taught you? Open to all the sons on our panel. Andrew, let's go with you first.
Jamel was ready. He was ready to go.
I had it on the tip of my tongue.
Yes, yeah,
it's
go
so
ahead,
simple. I know karate and I am somebody. Now let me explain. I know I'm not joking though. I'm serious. My father's a martial artist. He's being cool right now in his stance, but he taught us the martial arts of how to survive, how to train, how to see the world and try to avoid conflict, to not fight, to know how to operate. So he taught me the arts and how to see and operate as a young Black man, and then to be somebody. A lot of young Black boys don't realize their somebodyness and their importance and their worth. And my father has showered me with love and support. Black boy joy. Me and Andrew had a conversation about that, protecting young Black boy joy. There's a scene in Malcolm X, if you read the autobiography and also look at the movie that Spike Lee did, where he's class president, wants to be a lawyer, but a teacher said to him, why don't you be a carpenter? He even brings up Jesus and tells him Jesus was a carpenter. That moment there, Black Boy Joy ripped away and then taken into it. He ended up becoming Detroit Red and Malcolm, but protecting Black Boy Joy, my father has really just helped me see the world and try to be my best as I navigate in it. So Andrew, go ahead, man.
Thank you. So all of that, and I'm just going to add on because I agree 100%, is just the education in learning as a Black person, as a Black man, as a revolutionary act. And so I talk about that with my students. So knowing how to read, being able to critically think about what I was reading, being able to curate what I'm reading, to be curious, to be able to have discussions with people, to be able to sit back and ingest and consider was something that we did often, and we still do. We don't always agree, and we get which happens, but that as an important lesson, I've definitely valued and have benefited from.
Amazing, thank you. And to our fathers on the panel, Mr. Lawton and Mr. Hudson, how has your idea of what it means to be a Black father changed over the span of your life?
I'll take a stab at that. Being a Black father on the span of my life, it forced me to prioritize my life, how I had to structure it. It wasn't about me. I had to put my son and my family at the forefront, and I had to sacrifice a lot of what I may have wanted to see to it that they earned and that they got what was needed, whether it was enrichments, was education, performing, keeping them occupied. What they say, that idle mind is the devil's workshop. I tell you, I wasn't giving them a moment to breathe. You were going from step A to step B to step, I'm going to keep you on task because I know if Jamel got a minute to himself, and that's it.
We can see Jamel emphatically agrees with what you're saying.
Okay, excuse me.
And Mr. Lawton, if you wanted to tackle the question of how has being a Black father, how has that definition changed over your lifetime?
Part of the change has to do with like not only looking forward for them, but doing what I can do to research our family history to give them something back to look at, to where the foundation was, something for them, for the children that might come to them afterwards. Because I didn't think too much at all about my history beyond my mother's mother and father growing up. It wasn't until the Roots program came on that it really started me thinking about who came before them and how do I go about finding that out. So I set upon doing some research and did a fair amount. And I guess I will bore Andrew and his sister from time to time with information that I've discovered and have been dragging them to family reunions so that they get to meet some other members of the family, as it was news for me not too many years ago, to meet them, so that there's a whole structure around them. It's not just them. There really is a tree, and the tree has a whole lot of branches on it, and we just have to learn something about it. So for me, it's very important that they learn something about the past as well as they prepare themselves to move forward in the future.
Very remarkable. And just a follow-up question for our fathers. Can you share with us one of the proudest moments you have of your son?
Proudest moment was when he walked across that stage and got his baccalaureate. That was the first one. The second is not that the next degree wasn't looked forward to, but it was that first one because so many people I know of and heard of and who didn't make it that far, who started on the quest and then gave up and whatnot. But he stuck to it. There were some things, roadblocks thrown in his way, but he managed to hop over them and keep on going. And the day he got it, well, the family started laughing at me because I told them to pass me the towel so I could cry in it.
What's beautiful. Mr. Hudson, would you like to share?
Yes, I would love to share this one. I am a man, I'm an elder in the church also, and a man of faith, and so is Jamel. Jamel has been doing a lot of performing through the years, entertaining, all types of things. And he went to St. Anthony's High School, which is in Huntington, New York. And it's a Catholic school. And they embraced him. And there was something he had written once is, they didn't judge me by, the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. And I can say they did that. And when he graduated and went to Hofstra, I remember Jamel telling me that someone called him about wanting to use his picture at St. Anthony's. Now, I know Jamel is a very modest person, but this is something that it's beyond proud for me. I don't know if you ever heard of St. Augustine of Hippo. Okay, he's a representative of the Catholic Church. Okay, he's one of the saints, and he was a rhetorician. He was an African. He was a Black man. He was a speaker. And what they asked Jamel is if it's okay if we take St. Augustine of Hippo, that's in the chapel and the stained glass in their Catholic cathedral where they worship in the school. They asked if they could take down that glass. And when they put the glass back up, can we put Jamel Hudson's picture in that glass? I said, whoa, they want to do what? So we did, and we took the photo, we sent it to them, and they actually went and they took the stained glass down. And if you go to St. Anthony's today and you go inside and you look for St. Augustine of Hippo, there's Jamel Hudson's picture. Son, I know you try to keep that to yourself, but I'm a proud dad.
That's very beautiful. That's beautiful. And we have another question for our fathers. What are the key lessons you think individuals should be providing their children?
That's a good question. And it's also the toughest one. How to teach them to be themselves, to have that inner strength to know that when they do something that they think is right, to keep on doing it, no matter how many people around them are talking about, no, go this way instead of that way. If you know that that's the right way, then go ahead and do it. A lot of us don't have the faith in ourselves to keep on going. So that's what I want Andrew to know, that the path he's on now is real important to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could that question be asked again?
Absolutely. Sorry, I just lost my place here. What are key lessons you think that fathers should be imparting to their children?
Stick-to-itiveness. The roads are going to be rough. They're going to be tough. But find something inside of you to get up in the morning, to keep going. Not everyone's going to pat you on the back. Find something that can keep you moving, because you're going to find a lot of people, especially when I look, as I said, I teach in the school, and even with children, as we know, can be some of the not so nice. And I deal with this daily, and find something that you can hold on to that can give you hope. Some people reach towards Christ for help and deliverance. And it's unfortunate today, because in the school, they've taken Christ out of the school. And that was one of the big things about Catholic school, because Christ was in school in a Catholic school, but in the public school, they removed it. So find something that you can hold on to that can give you hope to move on for another day. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a question that adds to that point of learning stick-to-itiveness, being more resilient. What advice would you give young Black men who are afraid to advocate for themselves and are maybe not standing in their best self?
I'll jump in that one real quick. Society has a way of beating you down if you don't comply to the norms. Maybe the parent, if the parent's not there to teach them this, and unfortunately not every child has a parent to teach their son that you have the right to be quiet. You have the right to be silent. You don't have to speak. I'll share a quick one with you. I remember my young, vibrant son, Jamel. I remember him being in 3rd grade, and something happened in school, but I had imparted on him. If there's something you don't feel is right, you don't have to speak. And they called me to the school and said, such and such happened. And we asked him, and he said, Jamel stood there and says, I will not speak. I plead the 5th, get my father. I said, whoa. If we can teach children that you don't have to speak, you have the right to be quiet. You know, for me, some of the things I speak of, and I've heard this from James Brown, and it's kind of harsh, but I believe this. I'd rather, how does it go? I'd rather die on my feet than to live on my knees. Not everyone has that built up in them, but if we can impart that or learn that, to give them the confidence that you do have a voice, that you don't have to be scared, because society wants us to be scared. And that's what I'm going to share on that one. I can start preaching, excuse me.
No excuse needed.
One of the things that comes to mind is that when I was growing up, I belonged to, for a while I was in the regular Boy Scouts, and then I went from that to the Sea Explorers, and at the same time joined the Civil Air Patrol Cadets. Well, in the Sea Explorers and the Civil Air Patrol Cadets, I was the only kid who lived on the street that I lived on who participated in outside activities like that. And had a friend who participated, but he lived about like 3 blocks away. And so we used to have to meet to go to the meetings and come back. But the guys who lived on the block that I lived on, a lot of times on my way home, they would find it necessary to make fun of me being in the uniform, whichever one it was, and doing these other activities and whatnot. But my parents, my family supported what I was doing. And that made it possible for me to continue to go. And those were some of the best times I ever had during the teenage years, was being a member of the cadets and the Sea Explorers. So in my mind, to support what your children are doing, the fact that Andrew is running this Black Male Initiative and the Leadership Academy, I think things like that are absolutely the most valuable contribution he could make to those young men there, because to have somebody standing with them, you know, he's not standing in back of them and pushing them, he's standing beside them and helping them take another step forward down the road, showing them what the road is. To me, that is extremely important, and I hope he keeps on doing it.
It's incredible. So we have our final question here. So what advice would you give to Black fathers and sons who may not have the best relationship, and how can they repair that?
Mr. Lawton, can you go on that one first?
Repairing it, you know, I don't know that I necessarily have a simple, straightforward way to get to something like that. But for me, that's something that both parties have to want. They have to get to a place where it's something that they want, and then try to find simple, easy steps to take towards repairing something like that. I guess there were times when Andrew and I didn't always see eye to eye and get along on the path that we were walking. But some things I learned along the way, and some of them I learned in his high school. They had a parenting group in the high school that I used to participate in. And some of the things that they talked about in there was getting along with the children, and sometimes just setting expectations, telling them things that you expect, and making it known that if they are expecting things of you, that you both pick something that's reasonable and achievable, and you work towards them. There come times with some of the people in the group who feel that their word is law. It has to be my way or the highway. They don't want to hear anything else. And they end up finding themselves a lot of times in a lot of trouble. And I'm not going to make it too much longer, but there was one illustration of a person in the group who was talking about how her daughter always stayed home and never went out with anybody. And we tried to get to behind some of the bravado she was putting forth about, she was telling her daughter this and she was telling her daughter that and she was telling her daughter the other thing. And we would ask, well, what does the daughter think? You know, and she never would admit that she would ever listen to what the daughter had to say. Well, long story short, turns out that the daughter wasn't just staying home all the time. She had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend would come home with her and he would stop at the corner, and then she turned the corner and come on in the house. And so they never knew about him for the longest time until this girl and my friend had a run-in with the daughter, and they found out about the boyfriend. Well, in my mind, if you listen to what the person is trying to tell you, and you decide that, well, okay, there are some things that you're going to do, and let's talk about the way to do them, and see if we could work out something reasonable. So people who want to do that, there were other people in the group who listened to that kind of thought, and they had a much better outcome than the person who decided that everything had to be her way. And then she turned out to be the one who was hurt the most, more than the daughter. She was hurt because the daughter was not doing what she wanted her to do. So the long story short is, you got to compromise, and you got to find both parties have to want to do it, and then find the way to do it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lord. As I was sitting listening and reflecting and thinking about the question, one of the things, as you stated, both parties do need to want to come together to find some type of a common ground. But if per se the other individual doesn't really want to, or they're not open to it, myself as a father, what I would probably try to do is find something that that individual likes to do, whether it be skating or movies. Try to create an atmosphere of comfort, that you could come together, and it may not be something that happens immediately, but over time, if you can begin to break down that wall and you start to just share different ideas and just go into that comfort place where they are comfortable. Because, you know, you want both parties to want to agree, yes. But sometimes, you know, the father, myself, and I would hope the father would try to find that common ground or that place where that person is, and go reach them, go get them, and invite them to a place that they feel comfortable. And maybe there they can begin to dialogue, and the walls maybe start to come down a little bit, because it is not easy when you have a divide. But hopefully someone can come and be a joining force that maybe something can come out of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And this is right on time. This was such a rich conversation and discussion. Thank you, Mr. Loudon. Thank you, Mr. Hudson, Andrew, and Professor Hudson. Thank you so much for being you're bringing your transparency, for being present, bringing your faith, and definitely all of you for bringing your hope to this conversation today. And a wonderful shout out to Dr. Gary Dillon for being our moderator for this evening. Thank you, sir. You did a wonderful job. And everybody, until next time, be well and be safe. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.